Can you get a good deal on a gaming computer at a pawn shop? That's what we're going to find out in this video. Hey everybody, it's Chris from Family Geekery, and today we're going to be checking out a computer that I just picked up from a local pawn shop, and it was pretty cheap. So we're going to find out what's in it and if I got a good deal or not. But before we get into the computer itself, I want to give you some tips on dealing with pawn shops and buying stuff like this. Now, ideally, if you aren't familiar with the pawn shop or you aren't friends with the people that work there, then you want to have them plug it in, turn it on, make sure that everything works, make sure that all the specs that you think that are in there are actually in there. In this case, it's a pawn shop that I deal with a lot. It's people that I know and trust, and I know that if something wasn't right with this, I could bring it right back and get my money back. So I didn't have them turn it on. They had some basic specs. They didn't have all the specs written out, but they had some basic, like, they know it's an i5, they know it's got some RAM in it, that kind of stuff. It wasn't very specific. So I'll be really interested to find out what's inside here, because I know what I paid for it. I paid about $200 for it, and I want to see if that's if I got my money's worth. Now, I wouldn't have purchased this and wasted the time unless I thought for sure that it was worth at least $200. So I've been doing this long enough to know what something's worth just by looking at it, and we're gonna take this side off in just a second and look inside and see what's in there. So I'm pretty confident that I got my money's worth. Now I just want to see how much money it's worth I got. So let's go ahead and take a look at the outside of it first. We can see it's a Thermaltake case here. Looks like there might be some kind of lighting on the front. That tells me it's a gaming PC, of course. There's got to be some RGB in here somewhere. If we take a look at the top here, we can see the fans have picked up, some dust and stuff. So it's been in a little dusty or smoky environment, but it's not super bad. It's fairly clean, so I'm not too concerned about that. Now, as I turn this thing around to the side, you'll see there's all kinds of glare right here. But I want to take this glass door off, and I noticed there's some hinges back there. Well, it turns out that this is just magneted open, so that's pretty nifty. So we can open that up pretty easily and get inside here. So if we just take a look at some of the basics here. First of all, I wasn't sure if it was a pre-built. A lot of times at pawn shops I see a lot of pre-builts like iBuyPower or CyberPower, that kind of stuff. But this one either looks like it's been upgraded at some point or it wasn't a pre-built to start with, so we'll kind of diagnose that a little bit. And the reason I say that is because it's got a Cooler Master tower cooler on it. So this is not generally something that would be inside a pre-built computer. But besides the cooler, we've got some 2 sticks of RAM here that look like they're RGB. Again, usually not what they'd use in a pre-built system. So taking a look at some other stuff around here, obviously we've got a dedicated GPU, so we know that this is a gaming computer of some sort. We don't know how strong this thing is yet. Now, based on the size of it, it can't be super strong, but we'll find out. And then we got an SSD down here of a 500 gigabyte. So we know at least there's a 500 gigabyte SSD in there. And then other than that, we just know that it was an i5. Now, I couldn't see the motherboard number, what the chipset is, because it's probably written right underneath here. This is an ASRock board, and they usually write it just to the left of the RAM slots. So you would have to take the cooler off, or at least the fan off, to see what the model number is. Now that it's here at home with me, we can go ahead and boot this thing up and go into the BIOS and look to see what the chipset is. But based on the VRMs and stuff, it's not a super expensive motherboard, but it doesn't look like a super cheap one either. So far, I'm feeling pretty good about the fact that we got at least $200 worth of stuff in here. So I think the next step is, let's go ahead and turn this thing on and boot it up and see what it tells us. All right, so I got it hooked up to power. I got it hooked up to a capture card, and that way we can take a look inside Windows, or the BIOS at least. So I got it hooked up to mouse and keyboard. Got the power supply turned on. So let's go ahead and hit the moment of truth button here. And look at that. We got 1, 2, 3 RGB fans here. We got just a regular black fan on the front there drawing in. And this on the cooler also is RGB fan. You can't see that, but bring that around. So you got that. Nothing lighting up on the RAM yet, so I don't know if that's maybe you need to load a driver in for it or load some kind of software into Windows. And look at that. It is booted right into Windows. Speaking of Windows, so sometimes when you boot these things up, it comes up to a screen that it's looking for a password from the pawn shop. In this case, it booted right up. So let's go ahead and take a look at the hardware. And yes, it is an i5, so an i5 10400F. I've used a lot of those over the years. Real decent chip. 6 cores, 12 threads. And then we see we've got 16 gigs of memory. And it's shown up here as 3200 megahertz. So we can check out that RAM, but I believe that. So it must be already set up into the BIOS with an XMP profile. So that tells me that whoever put this thing together knew what they were doing. That's always good. Here's that 500 gigabyte SSD, Western Digital, and then GeForce GTX 1650. All right, so not super fast, but a pretty good intro GPU for gaming. That gives me an idea of the date also between the 10th gen Intel chip and the 1650. We're looking at probably a year and a half to 2 years ago, probably this thing was built. So let's go ahead and look in the settings here under System and then About. And this just reiterates what we just saw here. Everything minus the GPU. Running Windows 10 Home. And then if we click on this change product key, we'll see if it's actually activated or not. And it does say it's activated. And it's activated with an actual product key, not a digital key. So and that's probably another indicator that's not a pre-built, that it's got an actual product key and not just a digital key. So that's good. So I'm definitely happy with the fact that it's a 10th gen i5 and a 1650 and 16 gigs of RAM. So this thing is basically ready to game. Nothing really needs to be upgraded on it until at some point you may want to upgrade the GPU and maybe add some more disk space. So let's go ahead and power this thing down, take off the back door, and take a look behind the motherboard and see what all's back there. Alright, so I took the back door off. It is definitely a little dusty in here, so I want to clean that out for sure. And I'm happy to see a 80 plus gold power supply in here. Now it is Game DS. I've used them before. They're not top of the line by any means, but they're not bottom of the barrel either. And the fact that it's 80 plus, that's good. And the cable management in here is really nice. So someone knew what they were doing. This part right here, not a big fan of. I may reroute this going behind the motherboard, and this is going to be probably maybe the USB-C or the USB 3 and the front connectors, front panel connectors, probably going down underneath and plugging into the motherboard up that way. I would normally just route them this way, but hey, it all looks good. Well put together at least. Now there must be some kind of RGB controller of some sort, because there is an RGB button up here that does control all the lights on all the fans that were installed in there. So there must be some kind of built-in controller maybe for the case itself that controls those. And we can see back here that it's got built-in Wi-Fi on the motherboard. That's always nice. So other than a little bit of cleanup, maybe a lot of cleanup, this thing is actually just about ready to go. Load some games on it and you are good to go. So what do you all think? Do you think I got my $200 worth? Do you think this is going to be worth 200 bucks to someone? Let me know down in the comments below what you think. Like I said a couple times, I'm pretty happy with it. I know I'm going to be able to do something with it for that much. So we'll probably clean it up a little bit, do some tests on it, and then let someone else have some fun with it. So to review what we got here, we've got a Intel i5 10400F chip. Got 16 gigs of RAM on the board. Got a 500 gigabyte SSD, a GTX 1650 GPU, 600 watt, 80 plus gold power supply, a pretty decent case once it's cleaned up, some nice little RGB bling in here, and altogether a really nice little starter computer. So again, let me know down in the comments below what you think about this. That's probably going to wrap it up for this one. If you want to see some tests on it, let me know what you want to see, and I'll see if I can set it up and run some tests on it, run some benchmarks or something. But other than that, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up. I appreciate that. If you want to see some more things like computer builds, I just built this one and the one next to it that you can't see on the channel just not too long ago, so check those out on the channel also. I'm always building stuff, got lots of parts here, always throwing something together. But check out that channel, lots of other geeky stuff to learn about. And thank you as always for watching. Until next time, peace out and geek out.